Many millennials, the generation between 1981 to 1996, feel a clock is ticking. Yes, it's their biological clock. Some have married, others have added mom and dad to their credentials. But there's another ticking clock, the one to fix climate change, or else face the possibility that they and their children will have to live in a depleted world. It's their responsibility not just to help fix the climate crisis, but also to pass it down to their children. I'm Nina Lei from Concordia Broadcast Channel, and you are watching Millennial Parenting. For thousands of years, we have had the luxury of farming, grazing, deforesting, and degrading the land until it was exhausted, then moving on to the next. Well, we don't have that luxury anymore. And the generation that may hold the key to regenerate and sustain life on Earth again is probably the millennials and their children. So now, what can the children of the millennials do, and what can millennial parents do to promote moral thinking surrounding environmental sustainability in their children? Well, before that, let's have a look at children's perspective about environmental change. From the Education Department of Concordia University, Professor Alex Lamont is sitting down to talk about how children reason about the environment and the climate crisis. Thank you, Professor Lamont. Thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
I'd like to ask you first what children think about environmental change.
Well, first I'd like to say that children do indeed care about the environment. It all starts with their willingness to understand the environment in which they find themselves. This goes back to over a century now with educational philosophers like John Dewey, who have recognized that children do have this willingness to come into contact with their environment and to understand it. This especially includes the natural environment.
But over time, does this innate desire dwindle?
It can, if not acted upon. Essentially, as my fellow scholar Peter Kahn would say, there are two main ways in which children think about the environment. One is anthropocentric. That means that we only think about the environment in terms of its effects on humans. For example, if we pollute the river, then we have to clean it, we have to treat it. That takes energy, time, affects the economy. Another example is if we pollute the air, right, air pollution, then we won't be able to breathe very well.
What is the other way that children think about the environment?
The other way is the biocentric way. This means that children focus on the intrinsic value of nature. So it's not just about the effects on human beings. For example, animals have the right to their lives. This doesn't have anything to do with the effects or the consequences on humans. It's just about the intrinsic value of nature, plants, animals, ecosystems. Children only think in the biocentric way about 5% of the time. This percentage does slightly increase in adolescence.
Wow, that's surprisingly low.
Yes, but I don't think it's bad. Children do have this innate desire to understand the environment, and they do care about it. What my fellow colleague, Dr. Blanche Cohen, would say is that what really matters is making children active social actors, pursuing this willingness to understand their environment. One of the problems she has addressed is that children tend to be overwhelmed by all of the world's environmental issues, and this makes them hesitant to act.
Okay, so how can we as parents and child educators overcome this problem?
Well, what we can do is give children appropriate environmental education that really connects them first to their local environment.
Is there any evidence to show the effectiveness of this kind of teaching?
Of course, my dear friend, Dr. Flanagan, did a study in inner city Philadelphia. And what she found was that children were only able to change their attitudes about forest practices through demonstration forests, in which children were able to see the direct effects of various harvesting practices. So as you can see, we need more of these hands-on experiences. When children are just spewed information from a textbook, they're not able to grasp it. They don't, come into contact with the environment, and they're not going to care about it as much. As one of my favorite philosophers, John Dewey, would say, children need to act on their innate inquisitiveness. And when they're in that environment, and when they're really interacting with it, then they'll be able to understand sustainability and how they can help the environment.
So it's all about the engagement with nature. Now that we have an understanding of what research tells us about children's moral reasoning and understanding about the environment and sustainability, what can parents do to encourage this development? I'm on my way to meet another special guest. Environmental educator SIVAN BLACK-ROTCHIN will discuss how exactly parents can promote moral development about the environment. Hi SIVAN.
Hi Nina.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your job?
Absolutely. So I'm an environmental educator. I go to elementary schools throughout the island of Montreal to talk to children about the environment and what they can do to preserve it. I also give seminars actually here at the community center in Verdun geared towards parents about how they can promote attitudes of environmental sustainability to their children.
Okay, great. So why is it so important to target children and the parents?
So children's values and conceptions about the environment are going to shape our sustainable landscape of the future. Parents play a key role in cultivating these values and conceptions. Something that a lot of environmentalists like myself are really concerned with is this idea called environmental generational amnesia. The idea is that children grow up in a certain environment and that is just their normal. So for example, if they grow up somewhere where the rivers are polluted, that's just normal for them. That's just like normal environment. Whereas the river didn't always used to be polluted. So basically, as the environment continues to degrade, the standard of what normal is for each generation just gets worse. So it's really important that parents give an idea to their children of what the environment for them looked like. And this way children can adjust their environmental reasoning.
Interesting. So what can parents do to teach the children about the environment in the past?
So firstly, parents should discuss it with their children. So just to give you an example, my family had a house on Lake Champlain, which is just a bit south of Montreal. And growing up, the lake was always polluted. So you couldn't really swim in it. If you went inside, you would get an ear infection. It was that bad. But that was always just my normal, right? But my parents made a point of talking about how when they grew up, the lake, you could swim in it. It was like this hub of activity. And then for my grandparents, the water was pristine. So basically, had they not talked to me about the environment of the past, for me, the normal would have just been, oh, the lake is polluted. That's just normal.
What a shame that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important that parents help their children experience more pristine landscapes so that the children have an idea of what nature could be, that they have a point of comparison. That is a key point, actually, that parents should bring their children into nature, allow them to experience it with all the senses.
This is exactly parallel to what Professor Lamont was saying earlier. But I wonder, is that how most children appreciate nature?
Studies have shown that children tend to appreciate nature, not for nature's sake, but in how it serves humans. We should be cultivating in children a sense of we shouldn't pollute the air because this disrupts ecosystems. So something like totally separate to us, right? I mean, it's not wrong that children have this attitude, right? Because they're still caring about nature, but it actually shifts as they get older. But it's a good thing to try to bring that on early.
How can parents promote this appreciation? How can they encourage this appreciation?
Yeah, great question. Like I said before, what's really important is that they can encourage their children to play outdoors. And this seems like a very basic point, right? But actually, I mean, you see this trend in a lot of schools where they're not having recess outside as much anymore. It's too short, they don't go out. Also, they should encourage their children to teach them about nature. So the parents should encourage the children to kind of teach the parents as well. And in this way, the child gains a sense of authority and is engaged with what they're learning about here.
Wait a minute, what do you mean about a child's sense of authority? What does that mean?
I believe that children are not passive learners. So actually they learn best when they're actively engaged in what they're learning about. And in this case, it's the environment, right? So when a child is actively engaged in what they're learning about, they develop a sense of commitment to it, and this sense of authority, this sense of, I know this, I have first-hand experience, I have first-hand knowledge, and also creativity.
Almost empowering.
It's totally empowering for the child. It's very empowering.
That's great. Well, wise words.
Thank you so much, Nina.
Children are the next generation that can make change to the ticking clock of the climate crisis. Although children have this natural affiliation with nature, it is the role of parents to foster and strengthen this connection, not through preaching and forcing, but through being a co-constructor to learn about the world around them. So let us know what practices you would like to apply to your children in the comment below. And don't forget that you can download the fact sheet for this episode and learn more about children's moral development at CONCORDIA.CA /millennial parenting. That's it for today. Thank you and see you next time. Why do you think it's important to let children interact with nature and play and...
This is natural habitat, right? There's nothing, it's just them observing, playing, throwing rocks is so simple, yet look at how much fun they're having. They don't need to be sitting in front of a TV. Often on tablets, sometimes watching lots of cartoons, TV. So it's great to especially live nearby the water like this and let them come and just play. I grew up doing this, so this is definitely something I want them to experience and understand that they don't have to be inside, they don't have to have a lot of toys, and they can just come and experience nature just like this.
Do you think this helps them develop an appreciation for nature as well?
Absolutely, yeah. If they never had any experience doing this, it would just be completely foreign to them. They would have no idea, right? So to be able to bring them down here just in this small little area to have fun like this for however long they want, and that's it. It's simple. It's just so simple.
So apart from the things that you teach them, do you find them teaching you sometimes about what they find in the nature? And
well, I find just at their age to see how observant they might be, asking questions, especially my older daughter, 4 years old, lots of questions. So to answer things like about birds or rocks or the water, like simple questions that they might not think about, but being down here, they're gonna ask those questions, or they might not seeing this same type of thing on TV, they won't ask the same questions because they're not experiencing it in the same way.
So it's very important that all the senses are engaged.
Exactly. You can see here just how much fun they're having. And for me, I don't care how dirty they get. I don't care how wet they get. As long as they're being safe and they're having fun, that's all that matters, really.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.